It's been 10 months since I joined Washington Township, and it has been a wild and fabulous experience for me making the transition over into the township government here. And just for a show of hands, who knows what the township is and what do they do? I just want to get a kind of a pulse in the room. You know how good Denise raised her hand. And so I'll just take a little bit of time on the background of it, because a lot of people, particularly if you live in the city of Dublin, you might forget that you live in Washington Township too, and that's pretty important because you're paying tax dollars to the township for some specific services that are pretty important to our quality of life here in the township. There's over 1,300 townships in Ohio. It's one of the oldest forms of local government in the state. Washington Township happens to be in the top 20 in the state based upon population. We have about 43,000 residents within the township. We operate on an annual budget of $21.5 million, so we're not a tiny enterprise in what we do here in the community. And I'm just curious what services you think we might provide. Just shout them out.
EMS.
Right, that's what everybody relates to us. Because, there we go. See, somebody knows we do a little bit else here in town. But definitely fire and EMS, community safety, education, those are our core services. And we're going through a transition time actually looking at our core lines of business. And I'll share with you a little bit about what that means going forward with where the township is. We are about 27.5 square miles for our jurisdiction. About 25 miles of that is the city of Dublin. So we entirely take up the city of Dublin plus some areas, particularly along the Madison County, Franklin County line that we call the unincorporated area. We used to have a lot more space along Hayden Run. Columbus has annexed that over time. And we have been okay with that as a township because we think for the land development that's happening there, that annexation is the right way to get services to those properties. Just take a minute, talk about what I was saying about. Here's the part of the unincorporated township, pretty much over here on the western edge, and then there's some pockets in between. And, we partner with other jurisdictions, and to really to articulate that is because of how we're structured under the Ohio Revised Code. All 1,300 townships have a governance structure of 3 elected trustees. Denise France King is our current chair of our board of trustees. Jean Bostic is another trustee that many of you probably know here in the community, as well as Chuck Cranstuber. Perhaps a little less known is that those 1,300 townships also have an elected fiscal officer. Our fiscal officer is Joyce Robinson. She's been in that capacity for going on 15, 16 years now, and helps administer the day-to-day finances of the township. So the trustees are setting the policy direction for what services and how they're delivered. The fiscal officer is keeping up with obviously the financial side of things, and that's where I come in is kind of what happens next. My job is to implement that policy direction from the trustees day to day, do oversight of the operations of the township on a day-to-day basis, the management of it, prepare and make recommendations related to our budgets, and ensure that's all running smoothly. Our goal in the township is to be really seamless with the city of Dublin in places that make sense. And you see that in emergency services. We partner with the city of Dublin pretty frequently. Whether it's training, a good example is we're right now setting up some active shooter training. It's a situation we never want to run into in our community, but the reality is that the fire department and the police department are both going to show up on scene, and we want to make sure everything's worked out before that ever happened, and how they're going to operate with one another in that situation. But also with police dispatching that comes from the city of Dublin. The township plays some roles in maintaining the hydrant system in the community, and we work very closely with the city of Dublin providing review services for any new development, both primarily commercial development, for implementation of the fire code in the community. As I mentioned, we're funded by primarily property tax dollars here in the community. For our $200,000 home in the community, that's about $700 a year that you're paying in township taxes. That's about 11% of your property tax bill. So we're a part of the puzzle, so to speak, when it comes to your property taxes here in the community. And I hope that to articulate to you today the value of that, because the reality is 90% of the community doesn't call us. They don't have an emergency, and that's where we want to be a partner with you and making sure that you don't have to call us, but that we're there and we're ready if you do. And we've been taking steps to make sure what our long-term financial planning will be. We have a current levy of 8.25 mils that will expire at the end of this year for our fire services. So you'll be hearing more in the community coming up about that. We're right now looking at what our strategy is, what do we need in terms of resources to continue our high-quality services, and what are our upcoming capital needs. A good example is our ladder truck. It's our largest piece of equipment. It runs on most of our fire runs, if not all of them in the community. That truck's 22 years old. I mean, we've had a good run with it, and we've been investing in trying to maintain it, but the reality is technology's changed, and we're trying to adapt, and it's time to invest in new equipment. And those come in at the price tag of $1.1 to $1.2 million. So those are things that you want to make them last as long as you can, but when it's time to replace them. So we focus heavily on making sure that we've got a strong financial plan. So when we come to the community to ask for support, you know what we're doing with the tax dollars that you are willing to pay for those services. As we talked about, we do fire and EMS services. We do parks and rec as well. We have 60 acres of parkland that we maintain. There is the Homestead Park, which is about 40 acres on Causeway Road, down south of Hayden Run. There's also Kaltenbach Park and Kaltenbach Community Center that's at Rings and Avery. And I'll share with you a little bit more kind of where we're going with parks in a little bit. And then we do some roads, zoning, other miscellaneous services that are primarily focused in that unincorporated area of the community. Because fire and EMS is such a big part of what we do, I just want to kind of give you a glance at our services. Finishing up 2014, we had nearly 5,000 calls for service in the community. That's an 11.5% increase since 2012. So we're seeing a steady upward trend in requests for services here in the township. And how we're accomplishing that is really with the dedicated staff of full-time and part-time professional firefighters. That staff spends quite a bit of time training, being prepared to cover a wide variety of scenarios that could happen in our community, and they've done a lot of work in making sure that our folks are prepared for those scenarios. So whether I mentioned active shooter earlier, we've dealt with the potential for large fires in our corporate structures, to dealing with the residential fire, to auto accident scenes, to single cardiac events, to the Johnny that broke his leg on the soccer field. We would kind of run the whole gamut, and it takes some expertise across a wide variety of disciplines to be able to address those situations. Most of our calls match national trend of being EMS related. About 70% of our calls in 2014 were EMS related. And I think probably the thing that people always want to know is, well, how fast did you get to me when I called? In 2014, our average for the year was from the moment you called 911 to us showing up on scene was a little over 7 minutes. We look at it also, another is when's the time we got the tone out at the station to come to you, and that was under 5 minutes. So once we heard, that took us about 4 minutes and 22 seconds to arrive at that location. You put that in perspective, it takes about 5 minutes to brew a pot of coffee. So not that I suggest you do that if you're calling us for help, but to just kind of give you a reference. And we have a goal of being somewhere in 8 minutes or less. We've looked at standards to help make sure that we're staying within those lines. We are one of 10 accredited fire departments in Ohio, and only one of 196 in the world. So that's a peer accreditation process that brings in other agencies to say, are we doing things the best way that we should? And that has been a really valuable process to fine-tuning our efficiency as well as our performance in our fire services. Those of you who are in the insurance industry, you're familiar with ISO as well. ISO is the Insurance Service Office, and it has to do with rating of fire protection in a community. And those ratings are often used in determining premiums for property insurance. Here in Dublin, we're an ISO rating 2. The highest you can be is an ISO 1. So we're really fortunate, and that comes from the planning within the fire department and the coordination with the city of Dublin in the water system and the water pressures that we have here in the community. We could be a 1. It doesn't mean a difference in your premiums really from 2 to 1, but we feel like being at an ISO 2 is a way that you're getting back in the evaluation of your property coverage here in the community. I mentioned we protect 70,000. We have a population of about 33,000. Our daytime population in this community is about 70,000 people. We have to plan for that 70,000 when we look at our resources and our allocation. The other thing I think that sometimes gets lost in that is that we have a fire protection responsibility for $5.6 billion worth of real estate assets in the community. That's something we take pretty seriously when we plan our services. When we talk about partnership, we view us as a partner with a lot of different agencies in the community. I've talked about our partnership with the City of Dublin. There's really about 30 agencies and organizations and special projects that we partnership with in the community. A lot of you actually in this room represent some of those partnerships with where you're employed or activities you're involved in the community. I've listed up here just what some of the services are that we provide, but to give you an idea of the impact of this, we provided services, community education and safety services to over 10,000 people in the township last year. So that's approximately 1 in 7 people who are regularly interacting with our community that we touched either through CPR training, fall awareness, perhaps in our assisted living. We have a special needs registry program that we've been getting off the ground so that individuals who have unique health conditions that they would like us to know ahead of time, an emergency situation to know about so that we can provide better care for them. And we've continued to look at how do we mold and adapt our services to meet the needs of the community. We have people call us and say, can you help me with this? And it could be a stretch, and they're like, I don't know. We want to hear about those because we want to be able to assist you, particularly when it comes to the safety education efforts in this community. We teach CPR in all 3 high schools here in Dublin. We have a real commitment, and you'll see some more of this coming up soon about preparing our community for managing cardiac events. There's been we've seen an anecdotal trend of people driving themselves to Dublin Methodist Hospital with signs of chest pain or a cardiac event. Well, we don't want you to drive. We want you to call us. I mean, it's dangerous to you. It's dangerous to the community. Quite honestly, we have tools that your tax dollars have purchased to help you in that situation that can't happen until you interact with a healthcare professional. So we want to continue that safety message in the community and partner with groups that believe in that message as well. Lastly, just wanted to talk a little bit about the future and some things going on. I've hinted about some changes in Parks and Recreation, and the trustees took a hard look at what should be the core services of the township. Our Parks and Rec department started back in the 70s. At that time, it was the township. You think of what Dublin looked like in the 70s compared to now, it was completely different. And the trustees have decided that the best course of action is to transition completely out of Parks and Recreation as one of our core services. So we've been working with the City of Dublin and the City of Hilliard to see how to do that with our park assets. Matter of fact, here in the next 2 weeks, two pieces of legislation will be considered by both the township and the city to transfer Coltonback Park to the City of Dublin and add that to their park assets, as well as the township and the city entering into a partnership agreement for the township to help fund future parkland acquisition within the City of Dublin, knowing that benefits our residents as well. And really it became a look at the model of what's good governance. To get out of the line of business is somewhat unusual probably in government. But today we've got 4 Parks and Rec providers right here in this area. You got the city, the township, you got the City of Hilliard, and then you've got metro parks. And that was really kind of saying, what's the right thing going forward? When that happens, when that transition is complete on both of those parks, that frees up about $500,000 in tax revenue a year that can be put towards fire and EMS services into the future. And we're looking closely at how do we make that transition so that we can plan judiciously with our funding going forward. I mentioned to you we have a fire levy coming up. We're certainly are planning for that. That will be a topic of significant discussion by the trustees here in first and second quarter as they figure out what they think is going to be the level of resources to request from the community. So I suspect at some time, here you'll hear information in the community and perhaps even back here from the trustees about that. And I'm always happy to answer any questions you might have about that, how we're funded, what we're doing with that funding as well. We're also spending some time on our communications infrastructure. You receive a newsletter from us twice a year called Describe. I actually thought when I first came to the township, no one reads this thing. I mean, who reads this thing? I feel like just government geeks like me read this thing. That was really my impression of it. So I asked our communications manager, give me some idea, some indication about what kind of readership we have. Interestingly, we did a call for action in one of those issues, and I was shocked, unsolicited, just from a short little call for action. We had 50 people actually take the time to fill out a survey and put their own stamp on it. To me, that tells me people are looking at the publication in the community. We have 50 people to do that from our publication that comes out. But we're also looking at how to expand that and working with other publications like the Healthy magazine that comes out through the school district in the city of Dublin, and adding some of our community education programming in that, and other venues that are of value to reaching you with important messages. We're also looking at updating our IT infrastructure. We've been working hard on getting our fiber connectivity between all of our fire stations. Why that matters is that we really have some new technologies out there that we would like to implement in fire service that ultimately result in better service delivery to you. But that fiber connection is really the final step, and we're getting that done here in the first part of 2015, and are looking forward to how that investment will pay dividends and how we manage our IT infrastructure and some ultimate cost savings we're anticipating we'll be able to take advantage of because of that initial upfront investment. And then I just wanted to talk about our partnerships and training. I mentioned we trained the city of Dublin. Give just another example of how we try to reach out and be a partner. We've been interacting with Ohio University's campus just here in the community, and we have a piece of equipment that we use that's called SimMan. It's essentially a robot that mimics the human body that we train our paramedics with regularly to help them when they arrive on a patient, and trying to diagnose a patient, determine care. We have one of those because they cost about $100,000. So I'm trying to work with our staff, and we're running 130 firefighters through one piece of equipment every week. And Ohio University has been so kind to allow us, they have more up-to-date technology, to utilize theirs. So our paramedics are going to OU using their sim lab to practice things. So like in this upper picture right here, that's our SimMan. We have 2 paramedics there that are practicing intubation. Trust me, if you've ever been intubated, this is something you want somebody to get right the first time. And that doesn't happen without practice, because typically you don't have a patient leg typically still, perfectly still when you're trying to perform a procedure like that. So, but being able to reach out with OU, them making their facilities available to us has been a great benefit. Them doing that at no charge to us, and likewise helping their students as they come through are going to be writing as observers on our medics, so they understand what kind of care is happening on scene prior to arrival at a hospital, and really help them get a better understanding of some of that service delivery. I feel like I've been a motor mouth up here, so I wanted to give Denise an opportunity for anything else you might want to add or anything decent. Any questions? Just Denise, give you a shot here.